All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and we've got an amazing episode for you today. Very special guest who talks to you about what happens when life throws you a curveball and what do you do next. And we also unpack what a slingshot mindset is. What else do we cover, Ben?
That's right, Bryce. What we also hear from Gemma is she shares some vulnerabilities and also those life skills and those life experiences in terms of how she now teaches people about money and finances.
Well said, Ben. So much to cover in this episode. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and also welcome to you, Ben, on a week that there's not too many opportunities to gloat about living in Victoria, being a Perth boy who married a Victorian girl.
Yes.
But this is one of them, given that we get a public holiday for the Melbourne Cup and we get a public holiday for Grand Final. But welcome to the Property Couch.
Well, it speaks volume about the productivity that happens in this state, doesn't it?
That we don't get. Yeah, but also speaks volumes to the fact that they're the only two things we look forward to living in Victoria. No, of course, there's lots of Victorians who love living here, but as an outsider, you've got to take a few wins. But mate, you have been doing some advocacy work of late.
Yes.
And some news dropped recently that you want to share with the community that's been positive.
Yeah, it's been huge. I mean, at the start of last week, Bryce, Macquarie Bank was talking about reducing the number of company and trust loans that they were willing to do, reducing it down to one. And then by the end of the week, it was we're out. We're pausing all lending in company and trust. Now, a little bit of backstory. So probably at the start of September, I released basically an open letter to all of the trade associations as the chair of PICA with my serious concerns about the level of social media marketing that was going on, spruiking access to unlimited borrowings if you set up company or trusts so you can buy multiple properties. And that is always a worry when credit becomes super easy. Now, that is obviously filtered through. There's been lots of conversations around that. And so Macquarie's decision is a smart one in my mind. And the reason why I say that, Bryce, is I don't know whether you've been following The Shield and the First Guardian stories in the financial services area.
It's worth sharing here.
It is worth sharing. Like $1.3 billion of investor money has been lost in these two investment schemes. And you can follow the origin story to social media marketing. Social media marketing then driving a group of financial planners to offer cookie-cutting investment advice to invest in these two particular investment platforms and make strong commissions off the back of that. So if you look at the playbook there, and then you have a look at the playbook that's operating here, same thing. Small group of operators, so certainly not every buyer's agent and every mortgage broker acting in this particular way, but enough of a cohort where they're basically influencing the market and they're driving an incredible amount of demand. So Macquarie, just out of information for our community, they have agreed to pay $344 million in remediation for their involvement in the Shield and First Guardian scenarios. Now, they've done that proactively done that. They haven't been instructed by the regulators yet, but there's a lot of mess that's being, the cop on the beat, ASIC is basically tidying that up. So, and I'm not saying the reason why Macquarie, that's the main reason that they think they're liable for what they've done. I don't think that at all. But it's clear in terms of the communication that they issued to brokers was the level of social media marketing that they saw out there. And so if any lender is playing in this space right now and you've got people on TikTok and Insta or Facebook and they're dropping your business name, i.e. Commonwealth Bank of Australia will do this. And at the moment, they're talking about also giving add backs of negative gearing in a trust which don't actually work. Then I know that this is going to end badly, and it's going to end through you either proactively stopping it and making sure that it's not as bad as it could be, or the regulator, the cop on the beat, is going to step in and you're going to face millions and millions of dollars of fines, or even worse still, you're going to basically potentially find that it's not just fines you're going to have all these other remediations and ramifications, as will the industry. So I think it is a timely reminder, and I'm pleased that Macquarie has looked at that. And I'm saying to all other lenders out there, if you're going to actively stay in this trust and company lending space, I would be very careful about what application inflows that you're currently receiving. And if you're getting a spike from a particular group of brokers or whatever, I would be then sort of saying, I'd be making further inquiries. I'd look under the bonnet and I'd see, okay, which buyers agency groups have they got partnerships with? And then I'd go on social media and I'd see what's being spruiked out there, because that's the model. And so it is a warning to all lenders out there, and I've put a follow-up subsequent media release at the start of this week talking about that. So step in the right direction. Still wearing my picker hat. I'm still concerned that it'll just move all of these flow of business into these second tier and third tier lenders. So ultimately, if you want to play in this space, just be very, very careful that if it can be traced back to unsolicited and unfettered social media marketing, the regulators aren't going to blame the customers. They're going to blame the lenders who lent them the money and the people who facilitated it. And so that's an important and timely reminder.
Yeah, well said. I think it's important that, to your point earlier, that there's legitimate people that need to use those structures, and that's fine.
That's correct.
It's obviously the cookie cutting that's the challenge. So there you go, folks. There's been some progress in that space as well. And we've got a very special guest today. So before we move on there, just a couple of housekeeping matters. We want to hear from you, the TPC Survey. Click on the link in the show notes. That'll take you directly there so you can give us the feedback on what you want to see on the podcast in 2026. Just a little reminder around the audiobook. You can get access to that in Moorr, Ben.
Yes.
You can get access to that using the links below.
Spotify.
And also the free property report, Ben. Now is a very good time people think now's the time to sort of wind down for Christmas, which I get around energy and all those sorts of things, commitments. But I promise you, if you want to have a jump on the market in the early New Year, you do your homework now.
They are so popular, Bryce. We've had now over 12,000 of those reports downloaded.
Yeah.
So they are, because they've just got rich information.
Yeah, they're not just some AI collected internet spray.
Yes.
They've actually got some real genuine
grunt
substance to them. So, and it's free. Why wouldn't you take it for free?
Yep, exactly.
We have in the past sold them for $39.
Yes. Well, we still actually sell them on our SRP website for $39.
So the property couch people get them for free.
Yep.
The non-property couch people get it for $39.
Correct. Just jump on the Moorr and grab them.
Hey, we've got a really special guest today. Her name is Gemma Mitchell. Let's cut to the interview Ben and I recently had with Gemma. All right, Ben, we've got a very special guest today. We are talking with Gemma Mitchell. She is the financial advisor, money coach and co-host of the Australian Finance Podcast. She spent over 2 decades in banking, wealth coaching and financial services, guiding Australians through life's biggest curveballs: divorce, career change, business setbacks and beyond. Gemma is the author of The Money Reset, a 12-step roadmap that helps people turn financial setbacks into comebacks. Looking forward to chatting about that. She blends practical strategies with mindset shifts because she knows rebuilding wealth isn't just about numbers, it's about resilience, confidence and clarity. She's here today to share how setbacks can become slick shots, why money mindset matters as much as money itself, and the tools Aussies can use to reset their financial future. Welcome to the Property Couch, Gemma.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
It's a pleasure. There's so much to chat to you about. I think it's a topic that doesn't get a lot of airplay, and I think it's really, really important. So we're excited to talk to you about that. But before we get into your book and your frameworks, when you look back at your own life, what's the moment that completely changed the way you think and feel about money?
Oh, that's a big one. So I would say there hasn't been one point in time. I would say it's constantly changing, and even still now. But I do think back I've always been what you would call good with money, from the outside anyway, or I had very what people would perceive as good habits. You know, I was always a saver, I always had a plan, I was always working towards something, always budgeting from a very young age. So it's no surprise to most people that I'm in finance now. But what I would say is what I've learned along the way, and as I've got older, just had my 40th, is I am learning that I'm constantly learning, but some of those habits haven't been as healthy, and we'll probably dive into that a little bit more. But you can have good habits, but they don't necessarily mean that they're healthy. But I've always just been learning and adapting along the way. But how I approach money right now is very different to 3 years ago, very different to 10 years ago. But yeah, I would say that most people would say that I'm good with money. Hopefully I am. I'm in finance, but that doesn't mean that I always had a healthy habits around. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a moving target, I think, how you manage your money.
Let's lean into that, because good habits, but not necessarily healthy habits. Like, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I've recognised it in myself, and I've always seen it in like people that I've worked with. But you know, you can have good habits that, you know, propel your wealth forwards, move the needle, those kind of things, but they can still be unhealthy from a practical sense, from a mindset, all of that kind of stuff. So I've realized that I know that I've always had massive financial goals, but now I see how much pressure that I've put on myself. And I'm like, I think as I'm like leaning into 40, I'm just like, just chill out a bit. Like, have a little bit of grace. So, and I see it with people, you know, in their savings goals, for example, they might have a budget and they're thinking, great, I've got a budget, I'm doing really well, I'm putting X amount into my savings, you know, but then they're constantly taking money out of that. And then that's telling their brain, I'm just not good with money, I'm just not a good saver. Whereas if they just set the bar a bit lower and maybe at the end of the pay cycle went, I'm going to chuck an extra $20 in, that's a really positive thing. So I think, your mindset has so much to do with it. And we do these behaviors that we think are great. Another example is, you know, putting all your money in an offset account. It's a good thing to do, but it might actually be doing more damage, you know, in the day-to-day stuff. So there are habits that are good on the outside, but we actually just need to balance them with what's good, what's practical, what makes sense on a spreadsheet, and what makes sense for our lives and our mental health and all that kind of stuff.
So Gemma, we're going to get into that in a lot more detail, because I'm really interested in the sort of planning and sort of the short, medium and long-term planning thesis that you think about. But like we do with all of our great guests that we have on the show, can you tell us what money was like growing up and the discussions? Did you have discussions around the dinner table with your parents about money and how it all works?
Yeah, I don't think we did. We didn't talk about it that much. Like most Australian households, it wasn't talked about that commonly. But I do recall always seeing my grandma would always save 50-cent pieces, so the coins, and she would always put them in bags of $10, you know, the old bank coin bags.
Yes, I remember the old bags.
Yeah, and then she would give them to us for different like occasions and stuff. We'd get these bags of 50-cent pieces. So she was always like saving and doing different things like that. I remember my mum always had a budget. She always had a list, grocery list and all of these types of things. And she would talk to us about like the cost of things. And so they're all like really good habits to see. And I talk to my clients now about how important that is, you know, having conversations about money, especially around costs and, you know, doing lists and stuff like that. So I think there's some pretty, really common things that we saw. But when I reflect back, I do think that a lot of my scarcity mindset around money, which the book talks about, came from, you know, never feeling like we quite had enough and those types of things. So there were conversations. I don't know how healthy the approach to it was or that I took away from it either. But this all just makes me more conscious when I'm speaking to my kids and stuff and how we balance, you know, that scarcity mindset, abundance and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was a saver from a really young age, love a list, loved a spreadsheet the minute I found out about Excel. But I think, a lot of that came from my mum and my grandma.
So in terms of, can you sort of paint a picture of who's around the dinner table? Any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so I've got a younger brother and an older sister, and they are completely opposite to me with money, which is mind-blowing. And this is what is so interesting about finance and mindset and like the psychology around money and stuff, is that you can have the exact same upbringing circumstances, but you have a totally different outtake on it. So yeah, it's
and everyone goes, what did you expect when you had parents like ours? And it's like, well, you got 3 different outcomes with the same parents.
yes, exactly. Very, very different, my brother and sister to me. They're similar, but I'm...
So are they sort of, it
Spenders.
sounds like you, part of the takeaway you had, because there's two factors of money, right? One is obviously the purpose and the use for it today, but then there's the investment piece. So I think if I'm reading the tea leaves right here, you saying that with the conversations you had with your mum around money was, we've got to be diligent, we've got to be dutiful towards it because we don't have an abundance of it. And so it's precious, it's a rare commodity. Similar to my father's sort of upbringing with me was around that sort of stuff. So there was always that tension about the spending
Yes.
that you took away, but it sounds like your brother and sister,
No, they're very much like YOLO, totally different. But now when I reflect, so I did actually think, there's never enough money. We were always on a budget or something when we were growing up. But now that I'm an adult, I reflect back. And if I think about it, we had an annual holiday. So we're from South Australia. We had an annual holiday to Queensland or somewhere. I had a horse. Like, I was in Pony Club. So
Okay.
when I think back to it, my parents were great at prioritizing what was important. And that was important. We used to do BMX and travel all over the country in these BMX competitions. That would have been so expensive. So I just saw that we were budgeting around groceries and cutting costs at home. But I didn't see that as, this is because my parents are so good at prioritizing what's important. And so maybe they had those conversations, but I just didn't pick up on it. But I'm very big on talking to my kids about saying no to them, and not because we can't afford it. It's because we're prioritizing other things, and other things are more important to us. So yeah, it's complicated when you start kind of looking back and working out where your money mindset and all of these habits and traits that we have as adults come from.
Every dollar's got a job to do, right? That was, that's the way in which, I like to explain it. So you're moving through your adolescence years and you've taken on your first job and you're now starting to earn income yourself. How much financial literacy and understanding of banking and that did you think you had? And were you equipped enough to do the savings that you wanted to do to hit some of those short-term savings goals?
Yeah, I've always had a savings goal from as young as I can remember. Like at primary school, it was the town show, like where the carnival kind of thing, that I wanted X amount of money for the show ride, for how many show rides, how many show bags. I've always had a list and a savings goal. And then I had a horse, so I would always save money and have things, like circled in the catalogue for the tack shop of what I was going to buy, what I needed for so I've always done that. So as soon as I had a job, that was me. I had a passbook. Do you remember passbook that you used to take into the bank and get your balance updated, printed in it? So I would walk down once a week after school and go, it was my favorite thing to update that. So I've always kind of been like that. But as I said, these look like good habits, but it probably went a little bit far that I just always put so much pressure on myself to have a savings goal. So I have a lot of guilt when I spend, and I still do now. I have to catch myself and go money is a tool. You're allowed to enjoy it. The only thing I don't have guilt around spending on is travel. That's always been a massive thing that I'm that's an experience I will spend.
Here. I'm hearing you.
Yeah. But otherwise I have a lot of guilt on spending. And I think that came from because I was always but this money has a plan. I've got a job for it and it should be working towards something bigger. But yeah, my brother and sister don't have that issue at all. They're not burdened with this.
No judgment for those people out there, brothers and sisters who are the same way.
But you need a bit of balance, right? That's a really good
Of course you do.
trait to have. I wish that I had more of that, and I really have to, get rid of the guilt around it. But like any mindset around money and habits, you need a bit of balance, right? You need a bit of both that makes that healthy medium.
So if we summarise that, Gemma, the scarcity mindset was a perceived challenge that was more than real, right? But it actually drove you to be really detail oriented, and what are your early memories of the goals that you had around money? Was there a fascination in understanding how it worked, or was it just all about saving it, or what was that early spark that sort of set you to where you are now?
Yeah, I'd say it was definitely more the savings. Like if we think back on conversations that happen around families, like family dinner tables and things, a lot of the time we find that women are talked to about budgeting and saving money and those types of things rather than investing. And my dad's like educated and but he never really talked about investing. And I don't think he, other than super, he wouldn't have really done that. So I didn't really have anyone to talk to me about investing. That was very foreign, really, until I started studying financial planning. So I started working at a bank when I was in accounting and banking when I was like 18 to 20. And that's where I started really like watching and learning from the financial advisor. And that's when I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I kind of figured I love banking. I could be a mortgage broker, like a bank lender in the branch, or I could be a financial advisor. They were the two kind of career choices if I wanted to stay in banking. And I, just was fascinated with the financial planning element of it. And that's where I started learning about investing. But before that, it was purely just, saving, budgeting, and how do we cut expenses to get what we need.
And how did you transition into sort of money coaching and podcasting as well? Like it seems like a natural transition, but what was the bridge? Who did you meet? Who was the mentor? What was the sliding door moment that sort of moved you into that space?
Now that I'm in it, it seems like it was a natural progression, but it wasn't at the time. So I was a financial advisor for 10 plus years. And like you guys know what the financial planning world is like, lots of red tape, limited clients. You get that great hour with the client and then you're off doing 20 hours of paperwork and research and compliance tapping you on the back constantly. And I was just so burnt out. And I was looking at my career. So I was like 35 or whatever. And I'm going, this is me for the rest of my working life, or I can manage financial advisors. And that was the only two options that I could see. And I was like, oh, both of these sound like terrible career paths. So I just
respect to those who love it.
Yeah. Well, now I'm back kind of in financial planning and managing them, so I shouldn't. But so really, the takeout is I was just so burnt out. And I just needed a break. And at the time, so I was still married there with my husband. He would always say to me, because people would come around for a cup of tea and they just wanted to talk about money. Like friends would just be like, but how do bank accounts work and what's an offset and how do you use, which card do you use? And just all this really general stuff. And he would say, this is a business. You could charge for this. And I'm like, it's not a financial service. It's not covered by, compliance hat on. I was like, it's not a thing. Yes. So I took a career break and then I just was like, okay, I'm going to do some of these and see if it works, see if it's a thing. And I was calling it consulting. And then I jumped on social media. I started a Instagram page and I had a few people doing exactly the same thing reach out to me. And they were like, hey, we're ex-advisors that now do this. We call it money coaching. Do you all want to kind of support each other? And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It really does have legs. And it just kind of grew from there. So it was me burnt out thinking about what I loved about financial planning. And it was the hour with the client talking about the things that are keeping them up at night right now, not what insurance policy they have, what's super. There's great people that can do that, but just wasn't for me. So money coaching, social media, started doing some public speaking and then, got the gig on the podcast and the book. And I literally, you could never have imagined this 5 years ago.
Well, there's some parts of your backstory that you probably couldn't have imagined, but one of those is you had a dream life on paper. You had a home, you had an investment property, you were traveling, and yet something happened. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I call them plot twists, and everybody has them, right? I feel like mine were coming pretty thick and fast there for a while, but yes. So I have reflected that I had this invisible checklist in my brain of what life needed to look like for me. So I'm a spreadsheet person, love a list. And that was how I had my life mapped out as well. I was like, right, so I need the engagement, the kids, the marriage, whichever way they came, the house. I was a financial advisor, so I'm like, we need the investment property, we need our super, So I'm just ticking stuff off. And then, my ex-husband, when we were still together, stopped working at 38 because of a medical condition. That wasn't on our checklist. Absolutely not. So that threw a spanner in the works. We lost my mother-in-law really shortly after. And then we got divorced. Divorce definitely wasn't on my checklist. So all of these things kind of happened within a few years of each other. And when you are somebody who maps out every aspect of your life and builds success around, your checklist, those kind of things can feel like some pretty devastating failures. So that's where the money reset came from, is me going, everything that I thought I knew and thought I wanted and life as I know it has just unraveled, and I need to reset all of my foundations. And I'd always help clients with this, but when you're doing it yourself, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, someone who's addicted to lists and order and everything in its place and a place for everything, it's one thing to say money reset, but what did that initial money reset look like for you in terms of making sure you unhinge some of that addiction to the checklist?
Yeah, so I talk about it that it's a lot of your money reset, and it's like reset. It says reset your money and your life, because it's literally that. But a lot of it is unlearning the things you thought you knew, the way you manage things, the way you thought, what you thought your goals were. You need to unravel a lot of that. And it might actually be that yours isn't a divorce. It could just be like this internal awakening. It might be job loss. It might be loss of a spouse, or just this internal awakening that you're just like, oh, this isn't working, or is this actually what I want? So that's kind of where the book helps people, even if you're in a couple. It's just like, how do you get back to basics and build up? And, maybe you come to the same conclusion that, yes, your goals are your goals and how you manage money is the best way for you. But we need to actually have that check-in and not just be going through the motions. And that's what I was doing. So year one, I was, in leading up to the separation, I was so confident. I was like, I've got this. I help people all the time with this. He's going to be right. I've got his budget. I know how the assets are going to go. Just really confident, over misplaced confidence. And then,
how long ago are we talking? What's the
it's
timeline
about to be the
this?
3-year anniversary.
Gotcha. Yep.
So year one, I was just still in checklist mode, just getting stuff done. And then it clicked over to the anniversary. Year one was done, and I completely unraveled. And it was like I just had done all the things that needed to be done on the checklist of the lawyers and all that kind of stuff. He was doing really good. The kids were doing really good. And it was just like, I was like, all right, my turn to absolutely spiral and unravel. So year two was so much harder than year one. But yeah, when I was in year one, lawyers and stuff got involved. So I didn't know how my finances were going to land. And that is really, really scary, because I thought I had this all planned out and how we were both going to be okay. And then, that was all shook up as well. So this is where I had to really concentrate on, this is the first year I can't have financial goals to work towards. This is the first year I can't really have the spreadsheet. And that, I talk in the book about my friends made me do a vision board. And I'm like, I'm not a vision board person. I'm a spreadsheet person. But they made me do a vision board.
Did you do the vision board in Excel just to compromise?
I did it in Canva. I'm not going to cut out it. But I got. But it took me a long time to actually get on board with it. And I still have it. It's up on my wall right now. It's my screensaver. But I put all photos, and I was like, I don't know what life's going to look like in a month, let alone a year, let alone 10 years. How do you plan? How do you have goals and that kind of stuff? And I was I'm building a life that's beyond my wildest dreams. So that's what I used to say to myself. I literally can't imagine right now how good it could be. And it's so terrible right now. And I was like, okay, so what do I need to build this life that I can't even imagine? I need to be happier, healthier, and wealthier. And so I just put those words on it. And I was like, right, and it's put photos and stuff that made me feel happier, healthier, and wealthier. And it says on it, what did you do today? And some days it was like, well, I got out of bed, that made me healthier. And other days it was actually really more significant kind of progress.
Gemma, there's some different places we can go into here, but you've obviously been able to sort of get yourself out of that rut that you're in. Can I go back at the start? We talked about, checklists and planning. And I wanted to talk to you about short, medium and long-term planning, because it sounds like, yes, we talk a lot about lifestyle by design and putting big rocks in the jar and so forth. And you know what it's like when you're talking to clients. you come in and say, all right, what does your lifestyle by design look like? And they just sort of look at you and they can't really think medium or longer term in terms of what that looks like. In your own experiences, when you were working those spreadsheets, were you doing medium to long-term projections like retirement planning and so forth, or no, you were just focused on, say, maybe the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I've always had the long-term ones, and so say, my financial freedom number. I've always had that, and then what that looks like every single birthday, what I had to be at. Like that's how, financial advisor. That's what the kind of stuff we do.
Yeah, the milestones. Yep.
Yes, so making sure that I was like hitting those. So when this happened, it was more about, well, I don't actually know what life might look like. So how can you define what your financial freedom number is and those types of things? I don't know if I'm going to be single forever, going to meet somebody that has 100 kids, like what kind of house? Like, so and the people that I work with often have gone through these big life shifts, and a lot of the time they feel stuck because they're like, how can I plan for something I can't even imagine? So I work a lot with people around that because I had to do all that work. And, the short-term goals might be that people think when they set goals, they have to be these big, audacious goals. They don't. Your goal could be, I want to open my email and not panic when I see a bill come in, and I want that feeling to be gone within 12 months. Or, you can have these goals that are just related to you moving forward. But yeah, when I talk to people about their short, medium, long-term goals, as a financial advisor and how I talk about it now, I probably am a bit contradictory because I used to be so big on you have to be so clear on your goals, otherwise it's really hard to work towards them. And now I'm like, you might not be able to envision what life looks like in 5-10 years. Let's do everything within your capacity to build wealth and to move forwards, even if you don't know what that looks like, because the minute you do know, you're going to be well on your way. And so in the book, I talk a lot about financial flexibility over financial freedom. That's a great goal to have, your financial independence number. But maybe right now, while you're going through a really difficult time, you do everything within your capacity with your savings, your investing rate, whatever. And then you're building assets that give you flexibility. Maybe you're buying an investment property over a principal place of residence, or you're buying your principal place of residence, but with an investor hat on, so that if it doesn't suit you in 2, 3, 5 years, it makes a great investment and you haven't had to sell it because it now doesn't suit this life that you didn't imagine. So I just talk to people about moving forward, even if you don't know what life looks like. But yeah, previously I was always like, you got to have the goal.
I think it's really important to, because the concept is just being directionally correct. I mean, when they launch a rocket, that rocket is being adjusted 97% of the time, and they're making small tweaks. And I think what I'm picking up from what you're saying, because I haven't been through a relationship reset that you've just described, but as long as a lot of the time it's like for writers who have got writer's block, the antidote is just write anything, just get into flow. Because eventually the 6th or the 7th sentence or the 8th sentence will spark something that then, and it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's make sure you're directionally correct. You don't have to be a sniper. You just got to make sure you're going in the right direction, and just be open to making all those adjustments along the way, I think, is the big challenge. But it sounds like you're offering an incredible mentorship to those who want to navigate the path that you've walked. But
lived experiences, yeah.
I'd love to know, because you've clearly got frameworks, you're clearly a logical thinker, but in the darkest times for you, you've focused on the end result, which is great, and you're directionally correct. But what was it, the person, the book, the virtual mentor, the real mentor, what was it that actually kept you, making sure you kept those adjustments going along and heading in the right direction?
Yeah, so in the book, that's a great question. In the book, I talk about your village, and your village is made up of a few different people. And I just got very, very clear on who my village needed to be. And so your village can be, mentors, professionals like financial advisors, property advisors, accountants, could be mentors, can be cheerleaders, accountability partners. So they have these different jobs, and it doesn't need to be the same person, but you also need to get really clear on who that person is and what their role is, and then know when it's okay to outgrow them as well. So like with financial advisors, you might get to the stage where you actually outgrow their skill set or expertise or niche or, whatever. So the village is so important. And I just got really, really clear on who my village was. So I have a couple of best friends who would literally call me every day and be like, are you out of bed? Have you gone for a walk? And sometimes I wouldn't answer. And when you don't answer, like if you don't answer for a while, people just stop calling. Not these people. So they were my savior. So Emma, Lauren, my sister were absolutely amazing. And then because I was running my business at the time, coaching, I always had like a personal trainer, a business coach come in and out of my business, and like I had a psychologist, like I had all these people. But I kind of felt like each of those experts, which is why I say you can outgrow them, each of those experts didn't really understand that if I focus completely on one area with them, I would drop the ball in the other. So if I was focusing on my business, or the book, for example, I was then not exercising or eating properly. Or, I maybe just got a not ideal text from my ex or from, email from the lawyer. And now I can't focus on all the tasks that we set for my business that I was supposed to be going through. So I just kind of felt like anytime I gave focus in one area, I couldn't keep the balls up in the air for the other. So I got rid of all those people. Don't recommend getting rid of your psychologist until you found a replacement, but I got rid of all those people and found one person that I felt could really do that all. And that was, I'm surprised that I did, but yes, she helped me with literally everything from my personal routine, my health, my business as well. I was looking at like changing my relationship with alcohol at the same time, and she had done that, like a year earlier. So I just nailed it with finding this person. It took a long time, and I just kept interviewing people until I found the right one. So I had a lot of characteristics that I needed in her, and then I had a great friendship group. And I have a financial advisor because money is so emotional to us. And I know that I need to outsource or just soundboard my decisions before I make them.
And what about the village in terms of, some of the that you described were existing relationships, but some of the other ones were costing, I'm assuming costing money, the financial advisor and the other
Yes.
psychologist help. What do you say to people who may find themselves listening to this and they're in a similar situation where they've got to say, if it's to be, it's up to me, but they don't have, the setback is real and they don't have the resources. What are the steps that they would take to eventually get to being in a position where they could get paid help?
Yeah, so that is so common. Like it is such a privilege, a luxury to be able to pay. Like this was costly, right? So yes, it was a very privileged position to be in that I could be like, hey, I'm going to throw money at this problem and get the support that I need. In the book, I talk about how to find the different key people in your village and how to know if you've outgrown them. But I think we've never been in a better time to access free resources. So we have free financial counselling, like National Debt Helpline and things if you qualify for them. There's money coaches that are kind of a bit of a middle ground before if financial advice isn't affordable for you right now. There's, like so much free stuff. There's podcasts. It's just about knowing where the resources are and where you can get them and what capacity. At one point I was getting ChatGPT to do me like reflective questions that I could because I'm not a journal person. I was like, I don't really know how to journal. Is it Dear Diary? So I was getting ChatGPT to do me up like a little template of how it's never been a better time to get access to things. The issue is knowing where to go and knowing what you actually need help with, right? Identifying the problem. So just so you can make that first step. The book helps with that, but picking up a book, a podcast, checking out stuff on YouTube. I think there is so much help out there. You just need to know what and why you need the help.
And Gemma, it's obviously really clear that for someone like yourself who has had that control, who was really clear on their direction, and then to your point, lose all of that control and lose all that direction, and then have the stumble as you've done. You talked about in terms of how you coach others and potentially how you've coached yourself. If we bring that back to the money story, where if I receive an email and it's got a bill on there, I don't panic about that type of thing. And there's a lot of talk in there about the buffers, the safety nets and the flexibility. And we've seen those come out in our conversations so far because you highlight the importance of those, but not just financial, but also mental and emotional. And, they are obviously unrelated, but they're also underrated in terms of, that particular story. So can you speak to us about some of that sort of mental and emotional? You did with you got your friend support networks, you got your village in terms of that. But the money side of it, I'm really interested in terms of how did you coach yourself to know that I've got enough money right now and I'm going to be able to not stress about that?
I don't know if I still feel like that, if I feel like that yet, and we're 3 years out, but no, it's so safe. Like our money is tied to our self-worth. A lot of the time it shouldn't, but it is. It's tied to every aspect of our safety and security, right? Like our housing, all of these types of things. Money, whether we like it or not, impacts every aspect of our life, our ability to get good healthcare, get the support and things that we need. So while it doesn't buy happiness, it opens a lot of doors, right? So money is so important in our safety and security. So I got really clear on what my non-negotiables were, and this is what I encourage people to do. So non-negotiables are the things that you're not willing to trade off for anything else. So I've got an activity in there, but mine were like, I always want to make sure above anything else that obviously housing is paid for, and I was in a rental then, still am. So rent is always paid, food is on the table for the kids, and their schooling is always paid. So I looked at what are my non-negotiables, and then I went, right, well, how do I make sure those things stay in my life? I need to keep my income. So what's the next thing that I need to be doing? I need income protection. So like, it's kind of like you dive down into, well, what are the values and what are your non-negotiables, the things that you won't ever trade? Because I think when we talk about your buffers and things, we go, oh, well, you've got to know, how much money's coming in and out, which is important. You've got to have an emergency fund, but we don't talk about the other things like what are these non-negotiables? I had a client the other week, and her non-negotiable was she never wants to go into a nursing home. So they were older and retiring. She was like, we want to make sure that we always have money to have in-house care. We will never go into a nursing home. So that was one of her non-negotiables. So we had to build that into her plan. So getting really clear on what your non-negotiables are. Like I would love to say travel is a non-negotiable for me. It's pretty close, but of course it would get cut if I can't afford it. But, it's a value of mine. But the non-negotiables are the kids' schooling, these types of things. So getting clear on that, I think, is very important.
In your experience with the work that you do with your clients, how much of an outlier are you compared to the people that need the guidance? Because you're driven, you break things down, you deconstruct what this looks like, even the framework that you just described then to go through what you needed to do to make sure that you had your non-negotiables in place. I'd be interested to know how many of your clients are outliers like that, or do you find most people are... Like there's a bunch of sensory overload that you're going through, like just you don't expect the relationship to break down, and then all of a sudden the stuff you've worked for is now being split, and we're arguing about what the split is, and then I've got to look after the kids' welfare, and gee whiz, I've got to like there is a sensory overload of stuff that's going on that I've never experienced. I'm obviously just taking it from talking to people like you, but that's a lot. So are you finding most people are overwhelmed, or are you finding quite a few people, because of the resources that are available, have got a pretty good foundation?
I think I work with most people, they are completely overwhelmed. And that's where the book came from and why it's in 12 steps. So I was completely overwhelmed. Like as I said, I was so confident going into this because I had all the theory. I'd been doing this for years and years, but then the emotional side of it, it just absolutely wiped me out. I couldn't concentrate on one thing. I couldn't get things done. It was a shit show. You might have to beep that out, but it was so much harder than I thought. So when in the book, it says at the start, it goes, how to use this book. You might not have capacity at the moment, and picking up a book and reading it might just be another thing on your plate that you cannot handle. So have a look what the steps are and maybe just jump around to it. Maybe right now, the thing that is keeping you up at night the most is your income or your expenses, or maybe it's your superannuation or whatever. So just go to that chapter, but this doesn't need to be another thing on your plate. And it's not about going from 0 to 100. It's just about just concentrating on that step and just taking one step forward. So that's why I wanted to break it into 12 steps so that you don't need to see the finish line. You just need to do the next step take a break. And it is so basic. Like, this isn't your book that's like, let's make $1 million overnight on crypto and be the next Warren Buffett. And it's just like, let's just strip it all back to basics. This is the bare minimum that you need to do to be okay in your financial future. And then the next book that somebody else will have written, not me, because I'm not writing another one, is the one on how you like build and do all that exciting stuff. But this is just getting back to basics so that your foundations are covered and you can sleep at night.
I think that's great advice, and we've talked a lot about on this pod about the money side of it. But the other part, and one of the steps of your 12 steps, is also planning your property path, and that's the wheelhouse that we also play here and at the Property Couch.
Yep.
So why is property such a key point of the 12-step process for you? So can you explain that for us?
Yeah, so property, well, we're Aussies, so you know how obsessed we are with property. It's a massive thing. And just like money, we tie a lot of our self-worth, our security, our safety to it. And on my invisible checklist, I was a property owner. I owned the house that I lived in. And then when I moved into a rental, I didn't even want to tell people that I was in a rental. Like, I felt a lot of shame around it. And I have investment properties, like I'm still in the market, but I just felt so much shame for renting. So if we have one way that, you know, we've tied our identity to, I was a homeowner, you know, it can feel like this can really shake all grounds. But the property path chapter is about all of your options. So a lot of people that have come out of a divorce, have had a job loss, sickness, injury, maybe they've lost a partner. Property, where you've lived, is a massive thing that might actually have to change. So I talk in there about maybe you fought really hard for the family home in your divorce, or you're fighting to keep it when you can't afford it. What are some other options? Could you sell it? Could you rent it? How do you like make financial decisions that are less emotional around property? And how do you use property to build wealth and move forwards without tying all your self-worth to it? So that's kind of what it's about. And it just goes, you know, it talks about, well, maybe you're going to be a rentvestor. Maybe you have your home. Maybe you got the home in a separation and you shouldn't have, because it doesn't feel safe, secure. You can't afford it. You don't want to be there. You just got a little bit carried away with, you know, and maybe there's a different property path for you that works better. So definitely not to the degree that you guys absolutely nail property and talk about it in your book, but just opening people's eyes to there's lots of ways to build wealth. And maybe right now it doesn't need to be home ownership. Or if you've got it and you just want to test the waters, I talk a lot about try before you buy. If you just want to test the waters of living somewhere else, what could you do? Could you rent there first? Could you rent out your place, or, you know, whatever? But try before you buy. I'm really big on let's not make rash decisions when we're emotionally overwhelmed and life is changing very quickly. How do we create that financial flexibility? So I just talk about, what kind of options and things you have with property if one of these massive life shifts has happened.
What are some of those massive life shifts that you see? I'm sure you attracted a lot of people that are in a similar situation to you, females who are coming out of relationship breakdowns. But what's some of the other sort of client avatars that people might not think of? What are some of the other resets that that you're coaching people through that like, oh, didn't quite think of that. Oh, okay, that's a good reset. What are those?
Do you know what
examples?
the biggest reset is? Retirement. Retiring is when everybody needs the biggest reset of their life on how they manage money and how they think about money and their goals, you know, down to how, you know, you manage your bank accounts might no longer work in retirement. Your mindset, you know, around, well, I was always accumulating and the next pay was just around the corner. Now I'm drawing down on my assets. So yes, I work a lot with with divorce, separating people. I work a lot with people that have stopped their careers because of disability or something, you know, from my experience with my ex going through that. But yeah, retirement. I've been a retirement financial planner for most of my career, and that honestly is the biggest reset that people need. So we talk a lot about that. How do you shift from your identity that you're tied to work, your checklist of success that you've got this career, to retiring and enjoying your money without guilt and seeing, you know, potentially seeing your assets go down, which, you know, they're allowed to. You've accumulated for a reason. So that is probably the biggest reset that people don't actually think of. Like, they just think that it's going to be smooth sailing and they'll move into this next phase of life. And it rarely goes that way.
Yeah, and they don't think about retirement in distinct phases either, because you've got the active years, the quiet years, and the frailty years, and it's something that I'm, navigating with my own parents at the moment. My mum is 9 years younger than my dad, and so she's in the quiet years, but dad's in the frailty years, and sort of some of the adjustment that as a family that we need to help mum through for that as well. But retirement, it's easy to just think of it as a bucket of time, isn't it? But there's stages that you have in those years as well that people need to plan for, that I'd imagine that's part of the discussions you're having.
Well, can I jump in here? Because I am also fascinated, Gemma, because I obviously ask our financial planners all the time when we are in the transition to retirement and landing the plane, because we've got a big group of clients who are coming through that phase over the next 5 or so years. How do they feel and respond, the clients that you're looking at, when you say the income that you've been living off is going to drop because they haven't necessarily built a big enough nest egg? Is that something that they have a bit of a sort of a reactionary response, like a gulp moment, so to speak? Or is it, no, we expected that because we know that obviously our earnings, we're using exertion income, so that's why we're earning what we're earning. So how can we live the same lifestyle that we've enjoyed on the money that we've got? Is that sort of the big part of the conversation you're having?
Yeah, and there's so many different outcomes to those conversations. So people, I find, are either very overconfident or underconfident. They're not sure at all, and I'm just like, you've got this. Like, there's nothing to worry about. And others, you like really have to have those hard conversations. So one thing that I love people to do is, and it's kind of like mortgage rates. When we were all on like 2%, and we knew they were going to go up to 6% when we came off our fixed rates, but people didn't change their lifestyle gradually moving towards it. They just waited for the cliff, right? Like, let's start moving towards things as we go. So, if a client comes into me and they're on 150,000 and they're like, yeah, we're going to be sweet on the retirement standard, 72,000. I'm like, I don't think you're going to be, because where's all that money going now? So let's start stress testing it years in advance, and stepping down and trying to work to a more realistic budget of what you're going to be on in retirement. And what that does is that frees up, if you can, frees up all this extra cash flow while you're working that you can put to other assets and things. But I don't want people to ever just wait for that cliff and go, I'll sort it out. And I hear it all the time. People go, in retirement, I'll just be on beans and toast. And I'm like, if you think back 20 years, so I just turned 40. If I think back to my 20-year-old self, I still like all the same things. I still want to travel. I still am very social, spending. So chances are in 20 years, I'm still going to have those same wants and needs. I'm not going to be settling for beans on toast. So that cannot be our head in the sand kind of, it's all good, I'm just going to make it work. Like, let's start planning towards it and adjusting our lifestyle a lot longer. And maybe that is changing your property.
Yeah, that's why the exercise of what you've been talking about around non-negotiables and discretionary, we call it essential and discretionary. If you're getting into a system or a process of money management where you are thinking about those types of things, that transition is, as you can say, moderated and smoother compared to the shock that they're going to get in terms of, like, bang, I've just got 30% less income or if I'm going to live till I'm 80, I'm going to have to taper down those things. So I really love what you're doing around that, sort of non-negotiable stuff. We do it similar in terms of that, because I think it just adds a level of understanding of your money position that just, again, takes away that fear. Because, I talk a lot about, what's the one thing people want to know about in retirement? Are they going to be financially okay?
Yeah.
Like, if you round it up to a 30,000 foot view, that's it. It's like, are we going to be okay? And then off the back of that as well, that all comes down to the numbers that we've got to work with and the expectations that we've got to work with as well.
Yeah, and like the earlier, like you guys know, the earlier that you start planning for these things is just so important. And when, I talk about slingshots as well. So when people are going through one of these phases that does really feel like a setback, that it feels like they are having to cut a lot out of their expenses and, really trim back, it can feel like a massive step back, a massive failure. But a lot of the time, if we can reframe it to a slingshot So this is something that's going to propel you forward. It's going to move the needle forward. So it's kind of how you think about it. And if I'm working with somebody and they do need to really cut a lot of fun and discretionary stuff out of their budget, hopefully just for a short time, but to move the needle forwards, I get them to do 2 budgets. The bare bones budget that is just the absolute bare minimums. That's going to be that's your step back. That's the slingshot coming back. And then we do an aspirational budget and prioritize what things are going to come in first. So for example, again, a very big luxury, but I always had a cleaner because I was like, it's more important for me to work and to enjoy the time with kids, and we can afford it. That had to go. So that was in my aspirational budget, that when I got back up to a level, that was something that important to me that I wanted to bring back in. So it's about cutting stuff out, but then knowing that when your income's going to change or you're in a different position, what are the things that you want to add back in that added value before, so that we're not just like, oh, hey, I got more income, but where did it go? You have this clear plan on, I would love to have these things back in my life, and this is what when I'm in a position, these are what will come in first. So I think 2 budgets are pretty important.
Yeah, well said. Look, Gemma, I'm interested to know what are the mindset changes that you think move the dial the most, right? Because you talk about having buffers, and we talk about financial buffers, but you also talk about having mental and emotional buffers. I'm trying to just put myself in the shoes of the people that are hearing this, or it's been forwarded to someone who needed to hear the message and using you as the inspiration from it. What do you think are some of the most important like you're into reframing, right? The slingshot reframe is perfect. The money reset reframe is like, you've got these wonderful frameworks, but what are the entry level mindset shifts that people need to make to build in those buffers for them to cut the path that you've just described? I'm trying to think of someone who's just going through it now.
Yeah. So the biggest mindset hurdle that I had, but I see in every single client, is that they're stuck, that they don't have options, and that there's just too much to do. So just understanding that, you're not stuck. You have lots of options, and it's just about taking small steps at a time. Like, that's the biggest mindset hurdle to get over, is going, I'm in a terrible place. I need to get to the good place. No, you just need to have one step in front of the other, and breaking it up into different steps and just focusing on that one. So it's that I feel stuck. Maybe property ownership is off the cards for a little while, or maybe the goals that you thought you had are completely gone, and now you're just like, well, I have no direction, or I'm feeling stuck. So getting over that is really important, and understanding that what your money story is, like your mindset around money. Maybe you have a scarcity mindset like I did, and you feel guilt and pressure, and then you're feeling frozen because you don't want to make a wrong move. Or maybe you have, abundance mindset that goes a little bit negative because you're like, what's that saying that people always say, don't want to be the richest in the grave or whatever. And I'm just like, no, let's not think like that. So identifying the stories that you tell yourself is going to help, because you don't need to rewrite them overnight. Maybe you don't even need to rewrite them at all. You just need to know what they are and when they're coming up, so you can identify if they're helping or hindering. So I still have a scarcity mindset. I have a lot of guilt around spending, have a lot of negative, put lots of pressure on myself. But I can see the habits coming up now that I know that I have them, and I can just stop, and I can, try to work through them and be like, okay, well, I'm now going to make this decision based on, I know that my brain's automatically going to shortcut to this result, but let me just actually take a step back and think about it. So knowing you don't need to change it all at night, overnight, is the most important thing. Otherwise, you are just going to feel frozen and stuck and not be able to make any progress.
Gemma, your honesty around telling your story and your authentic nature in doing that is why I suspect so many people resonate and can relate to, obviously, the story that you're in. So congratulations to you. My final question comes back to the sort of landing the plane as that financial planner. And, there's a lot of people that we know in society, because the data clearly shows that a lot of people don't do a lot of thinking about their future and retirement, and they don't act on it. and they put it into the too hard basket to put their head in the sand, as the classic line goes. When you do see a couple that might be in their sort of late 50s, early 60s, and they are starting to talk to a financial planner for the first time, and they realise they're a little short, and then they basically try and get aggressive with their investing. How do you talk them off the ledge in terms of, no, crypto's probably not right for you, or aggressive investing to try and get quick wins, to try and make up the lost 10 years. How do you approach those conversations with your clients?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And if we look at social media, you hear 30-year-olds buying 50 properties and stuff, and then I'll get a 50-year-old saying, "Should we be doing that?" I'm like, "Oh no." So I always talk about the sleep at night test, and the other thing I say to people is, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So we talk through those kind of things. Okay, cool, you could do that. Cool, you could go and get a $2 million home loan, but should you? How does that impact the other areas of your life? So I always like to talk about knock-on effects. So, okay, cool, let's imagine we do that. What happens if and when this happens? And is there things that we could do that aren't as risky? The goal isn't to always do the best financial thing ever. If it was up to the spreadsheet, we'd all have the same plan, right? It's to balance it with, are you going to be able to sleep at night with this decision? If the worst happens, has it still been an okay move to go forward? So it's kind of just talking through those what ifs and going, just because you can do that doesn't mean you should. It's all about balance, but it's going to come back to the mindset stuff then too as well.
Correct. It's practical, but also conservative in its nature, because, what's the Buffett line about rule number one? Don't lose money. Rule number two, refer to rule number one. Yeah. I think that there's an important message there, because unfortunately there are people who then try and make up lost time, or, to your point, I mean, it's only human nature that we see these social media posts of people making hundreds of thousands of dollars in 4 minutes. As they and that's their tactic to drag you in.
Yeah, clickbait.
A great financial planner has your short, medium, and long-term best interests in place, and works on the principle of don't lose the money. Let's build on the money practically and sensibly over time.
Yeah, and it's about once you're really clear on your goals and your values and your non-negotiables, that really helps. It still happens to me now. So I call it my quick spiral, and I'll see something on socials, or a friend will be doing something, or a financial planning client will be doing something for it. I'm like, oh, should I be doing that? Oh, that's, maybe I should. And I get a little bit off track, shiny things. And then I just come back to, no, this is my plan. These are my goals. So that used to take a long time, and me then feeling like, oh, I don't know what direction, questioning. And I'm a financial advisor and I still question my strategy. But because I'm now so clear on my goals, my values, my why, my non-negotiables, I'll still have those shiny thing, should I be doing that? But I can very quickly be grounded back on, no, this is why you're doing what you're doing. And so I think that's important as well. If you've got solid foundations and your solid values, why, goals, you can, check out exciting things that come up, but very quickly come back to if you should be doing that or not.
Hey, my final remarks. I got a comment and a question for you. The comment is to Ben's point before, is well done on being a beacon of light for people. That I think there must have been a point in time in your darkest moment where you decided, will I let the embarrassment or shame or whatever human emotions you were experiencing at the time, do I give into that, or do I actually just go, right, let's push through and tell people what my experience has been like, and provide a beacon of hope? So first of all, it's been an incredible conversation, and well done. You don't need to hear that from me, but it's just from an outside observer, just being that person for a lot of people, men and women who are going through relationship breakdowns. Well done. My final question for you is, what didn't we ask you that we should have? What, through the whole process, you've been on you've been doing all the interviews for your book. We know the labour of love that it needs to be to push out the book. And what was it that you wanted to get out into the world the most? And did we cover that in our chat today?
Oh, we've covered a lot. I think we definitely have covered everything. I guess the only thing that I would leave the audience with is a lot of the time people, you've got to find your village, you've got to find the right person, and maybe I'm not your person. That is totally fine. Or maybe, you're not into books or you need something else. Like there, you will find the support that you need out there for your strategy. It's just that you just need to do the first step, which is identifying where you need help. And like just, maybe it's all areas, but just identify the one area that you think might be the biggest problem. Maybe it's your debt or whatever. Pick up the phone to one person that you think might be the person, and they will, like, you've started the ball rolling. So for example, if somebody called me and were like, hey, I'm thinking about doing money coaching, or I read your book and now I want to do this. Like, I love this industry. I'm very well connected, just like you guys are. Like, if you weren't the right person, you'd be like, hey, I probably know somebody, or hey, try this. So the biggest thing to move the needle forwards is just knowing that if life is still like this in 12 months' time, and that's not okay, then you just need to make one action. And maybe that's buying the book, listening to a podcast, anyone's podcast, or picking up the phone and asking your accountant or whatever. And they might go, it's not me, but it's this person. And then you just keep, more no's get you to your yes, or whatever that saying is. But yeah, if it's not me, and it's totally fine if it's not, chances are I know a great coach or book or, whoever that will be a great fit for you.
Well said. What I would say to anyone who's listening to this or resonating with it is, if you are feeling overwhelmed, just go and buy the book, and then just take an image of the 12-step money reset plan and just use that as the end result that you're going for, right? Even if that's all you can do right now is create this is where I currently am and this is where I want to be. It's amazing how just that intention of setting where I want to end up and where I currently am, stuff just comes into your life, and to your point, the people or the connections or the introduction, or you'll hear something on the radio or something will happen, and you'll build that momentum to our earlier point of making sure you're directionally correct. So congratulations again. I think that the information that you've provided in your book is well needed, and for the people that you serve, they are the beneficiary of that. So on behalf of everyone on the Property Couch, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been lots of fun.
Thanks, Gemma.
Wow, wasn't that an insightful conversation, Ben? Just resilient, and I loved how articulate she was and around the numbers, and she obviously curated an audience who can relate to what it is that she has been through, but just the way that she thinks things through, and it was just a joy to have the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I took a lot away from, beautiful lady, really passionate about what she's doing, really ambitious in terms of that. But there's no substitute for that lived experience that she's also being able to curate and share. I mean, when you do it yourself and it's your own money and you make your own mistakes, that's okay. But when you're responsible for guiding, your clients, there's a whole nother level of importance and accountability that goes with that. And what I like about how Gemma now sees the world is that she's passing on some of those of her own lived experiences. And I think that's really invaluable to sort of teach, and guide and advise people on that way. And so I think she's a ripper.
Yeah, money reset moments, going along as if everything's going wonderful, and then all of a sudden, like, how many listeners do you think that could relate to that?
Yeah.
And I think there's, obviously navigating divorce is something that you and I don't have any experience in, Ben, but we've obviously observed others, and but to have someone who's just have an overflow of their own experience and their own heart to try and help other people. So her book is a ripper. You should get your hands on it. It goes through the 12-step reset framework, which includes stuff like money mindset and emotional safety nets. I love the thought around this is, this is just not spreadsheet conversations. This is human emotions that are coming up as well. So, Gemma, we appreciate you coming on. We think you've had some incredible insights to share with our audience, and hopefully it's not the first and last time that we have her on the couch. I think definitely be a follow-up. But Ben, until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Well said. See you next week, folks.